Next week, we will mark the saddest day of the Jewish calendar, the 9th day of the month of Av. This is a day that all sorts of terrible things have befallen our people. It's a most inauspicious day. On this day, it was decreed that our nation will not enter the land in the aftermath of the sin of the spies. Moshe sends spies, scouts, to go explore the land. They come back with a terrible report, with a damning report, and the people start wailing and crying and mourning. And they were mourning needlessly because really they had God on their side and they could have marched into the land and carved up their enemies as if they were bread. They mourned needlessly. And they might have said, okay, this is a night of mourning, you say? I'll give you a good reason to mourn. And all sorts of terrible tragedies, calamities, and unfortunate events have befallen our people. Of course, primary amongst that is the destruction of the temple number 1, built by Solomon in Jerusalem. It was destroyed on the 9th day of Av, on Tisha Bav. 70 years after it was destroyed, it was rebuilt. The second temple also lasted for 400 plus years, but it too saw its end on the 9th day of the month of Av. The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. The second temple was by the Romans, but both temples were destroyed on this day, on the 9th day of Av. We indeed were given ample reason to cry in this day. Beyond that, all sorts of other tragic and unfortunate events befell our people. After the second temple was destroyed, there was a resurgence of Jewish sovereignty under the leadership of Bar Kokhba. And the Romans regrouped and they surrounded the city of Betar, which was the Jewish stronghold, and the conquest and liquidation of Betar, of that city. It too began on Tisha Bav. All sorts of expulsions and other tragedies happened over the course of the centuries and millennia on this day. The Emperor Hadrian, he wanted to destroy the Jewish people's affinity and association with Temple Mount, and he instructed Jewish slave labor to raze the temple grounds. Raze spelled R-A-Z-E, to destroy it, to lower it, to lower the mountain. There were tens of thousands of Jewish slaves forced to have to manually lower the mountain. The first crusade began on the 9th day of Av. The expulsion of Jews from England in 1290, from Spain in 1492. Even World War I, which caused unprecedented devastation to European Jewry, began on the 9th day of Av. The liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto, but all sorts of other events have happened. And for thousands of years, this has been a fast day. Of the 6 fast days in the Jewish calendar, this is the saddest of them all. Together with Yom Kippur, it's the only fast day that is a full 24 hours, with a little bit added to each side to make sure you cover the entire day, the entire halachic day. All the laws of mourning apply. We're supposed to sit on the floor. We're supposed to not sleep on a pillow. We're not allowed to wear nice clothing. We don't eat. We don't drink. We don't wash our hands. We don't wear leather shoes. Marital relations are prohibited. We're not supposed to do any business. We're not even supposed to study Torah because that brings joy. It's a day of real sadness and mourning. Now, the truth is, we're mourning primarily for events that happened almost 2,000 years ago. The temple was destroyed 1,955 years ago. That's almost 2,000 years. And that's the second temple. The first temple was well over 2 millennia ago. And we're mourning today. And we have to ask the question, why are we mourning so long for buildings, for edifices that have been destroyed for such a long time? What ought to be our focus on Tisha Bav? What are we supposed to think about on this day? What are we supposed to do on this day? We know what we're not supposed to do. We don't eat, we don't drink, we don't study Torah, we don't celebrate in any way. But what ought we, yes, indeed, to do? That's the question I want to pose and ponder today. So just to give a little bit more of an insight to what happened, what we lost, and what we hope, please God, to regain. In the Torah, there are descriptions of mistakes that our antecedents made. Of course, 40 days after the Son of Revelation, Moshe is getting the tablets in heaven. He comes down and he sees the Jewish people reveling with revelry around the golden calf. And God says, I want to destroy this nation. We'll start from scratch. Moshe, you'll be the father of the new Jewish nation. New and improved, new and revised edition. But Moshe prays, and Moshe says, if you're going to destroy them, you have to destroy me. And if you're not willing to forgive them, erase me from your book. And God assented. God agreed. And immediately after that, there's the instruction to build the temple. And the way it's actually positioned in the Torah, it's not the same way it's positioned chronologically. There's the 2 parshas that are dedicated to the instructions to build a tabernacle. And in between the instruction and the implementation, you have a little sandwich. The story of the golden calf is featured. So you have 2 parshios that talk about the instruction to build a tabernacle, all its vessels, all the vestments of the high priest, and so on. You have the golden calf episode, and then you have the implementation of the building of the tabernacle and its vessels and vestments. And the commentaries tell us something very deep and profound. The tabernacle, that's the forerunner, the precursor of the temple. That's a point of incredible, brilliant holiness in the world, where the presence of God was felt palpably. But that is intimately connected with the golden calf. And here's why. What would have been absent the golden calf if the nation never did the sin of the golden calf? Then, the commentaries tell us, there wouldn't have been a tabernacle. You wouldn't have needed a tabernacle. You wouldn't have needed one point, one location in the world where God's presence was palpably felt. And the reason is because God's presence would have been felt everywhere. It would have been ubiquitous. Any place in the entire world, in the entire created existence, where a person says, I want to serve God. A person builds an altar and does an act of submission to God. Wherever that may be, God will come and bless you. That was the state, that was the plan after the revelation at Sinai. God and his presence were in the world. And then there was a sin. And the consequence of the sin is that this ubiquity of an intimate relationship with God was reduced to only one place, to only a temple, to only a tabernacle. The nation chose to have other deities, to have an idol, to create some sort of alternative to God. They said, we don't want this. And God says, okay, you don't want this? You won't have it. You don't want an ever-present, tangible, palpable relationship with me? Okay. You want other deities, other masters? I will limit my presence to only one building. That was the first cataclysmic sin of the people. We took a leap back away from God, and God too, in response, stepped back from us. And then there was the second sin, the sin of the spies. Moshe sent 12 righteous men to go explore the land. They come back with a terrible report, and the nation is freaked out, and they're displaying a lack of faith. They're displaying a fear of lowly mortal humans. They're forgetting about the presence of God in their midst. And they cried needlessly. Again, the nation is ignoring the presence of God. And God says, okay, you're crying needlessly. I'll give you a very good reason to cry. The nation is questioning God's omniscience and omnipotence. How can we defeat these Canaanite fearsome armies? They're much stronger than us. They're much stronger than God, the nation claimed. The nation repudiated God They rejected God a second time, and again, God responded in kind. So these two twin monster sins resulted in God constricting, so to speak, his presence in the world. With the golden calf, we lost, so to speak, the ubiquitous temple, and thanks to the sin of the spies, even a limited temple, even the tabernacle, that one point in the world where God's presence was felt very tangibly, that too was destined to be destroyed. Now, when we think about the destruction of the temple, the destruction of this place where God's presence was felt, it gets to the absolute heart of the purpose of creation. We think of our religious life as like an addendum almost, as an enhancement to our life. But the truth is, the prophet tells us, the reason why God created anything besides for God, anything that's not God is a creation of God. Why did God created existence? Why did God create our world? What's the purpose, the ultimate purpose of our world? The prophet tells us, the ultimate purpose is only one thing. It's only the glory of God. That the glory of God be manifested in this world, in this lowly, spiritually lowly world. In truth, there is no corner of existence that's not completely pulsating with God's glory. There isn't a place where God is not found. And we know that the angels, they're always in complete cognizance and recognition of the presence of God. In every place, Milo kol haaretz kavodo, God's honor and glory is everywhere. You can't find a single place, a single corner, a single tiny point where God's presence really does not exist. But we're blind to it. It's concealed from us. Adam, before his sin, he saw God's glory everywhere. With his sin came concealment. His eyes were shrouded over, were covered over. And he begins to see a world where God's presence is hard to find. You've got to work really hard to discover it. Before the golden calf, the nation was intimately and completely and ubiquitously connected with God. Any place in the world they could summon with their prayer, with their service, a point of holiness, the lights of which were thenceforth limited to the temple. The sin of the golden calf causes a reduction. The glory of God is limited to the tabernacle and to the temple. But what happens once you enter the tabernacle and the temple? There were ever-present miracles, our sages tell us. And you enter the temple, and your heart is heavy, and your conscience is weighed down, and you enter the temple laden with sin, and you emerge a different person. You emerge clean and pure and elevated and holy. In one place, the entire purpose of existence was manifested, was found. There was one tiny point where the ultimate purpose of creation was felt. And sadly, that was destroyed too. You recall perhaps the book of Exodus we mentioned earlier. There's so much detail, so much emphasis about the tabernacle. Every curtain, every beam, every socket, every hook, every vessel, every intricate detail in every part of the tabernacle. And we read it today, and we have a hard time seeing the value, seeing the emphasis. Why is it focused upon so intensely? Why is there so much detail? The truth is, this is the purpose of existence. That there should be a place where God's glory can be experienced not by angels exclusively, but by us in a lowly world, by spiritually lowly beings, by beings who have physical bodies, who are influenced by the evil inclination, who are subject to death and rotting. Even people like us can experience the presence of God. That's the purpose. And that's why there's so much of an emphasis on the tabernacle and the temple. Someone walked into the temple, and there was intimate closeness between them and God. As I mentioned earlier, the Talmud, the Mishnah, lists 10 miracles that were there, and that lasted for centuries. And the purpose of those miracles wasn't just to impress us. It was because this is a place here in our world on terra firma. It's like heaven. And of course, the most miraculous miracle of them all was a place of atonement. Someone does a sin, God forbid, and their soul is blemished. And they come to the temple, and they bring a sacrifice, and they pray, and they repent, and they're elevated. It's an amazing thing. But alas, it was lost. It was destroyed. The world was plunged into spiritual darkness. We're far away from where we ought to be. The world is far away from where it ought to be. The Talmud tells us, since the temple was destroyed, it's almost as if we have no connection with God. In the words of the Talmud, Book of Brachos, page 32b, from the day the temple was destroyed, there is a metal, an iron barrier that separates us from our Father in heaven. A second teaching in the Talmud tells us, from the day that the temple was destroyed, the gates of prayer were locked. You pray, it goes to God, right? No, says the Talmud. Those gates are locked. God almost is ignoring us in our pleas. And the Talmud says, well, there's still one gate that's not locked. And that's a kind of prayer that's so deep and heartfelt that it's accompanied by tears. When someone's so emotionally invested in their prayer that they're crying, that sort of prayer can still penetrate. The world is distant from God. That one point where the goal of existence, of created existence, was felt is gone. So we mourn and we fast. We're not fasting about events of the past. It's about our state today, for the present. There's a sentence, a very powerful, maybe even a bit chilling sentence in the Rambam regarding how pious people of yore, how they used to mourn on Tisha Bav, the 9th day of Av, and how they would prepare on the 8th day, leading into the fast day. Of course, for us, if we're going to fast for 24 hours, we've got to get our electrolytes and got to hydrate and got to get enough food, and we're focused on that. And that is, of course, very legitimate. And the pious men of yore did that as well. But how did they do it? So the Rambam says they would take some crusty bread with some salt, and they would sit on the floor, and they would eat and drink, eat bread and drink water, and would be as if their dead relative was right in front of them. Yes, they would prepare for the fast. Yes, they would eat bread, and yes, they would drink water. But their state of mind was as if, God forbid, their close relative had just passed, and the body is still unburied, and they're preparing for the funeral. And yes, they have to eat, but they're just consumed with sadness and mourning. This is not a loss that goes back thousands of years. It's a loss that's ever present today, ever since We lost that point of holiness, that point of connection, that point of holiness in the world where the presence of God was present, was palpable, was tangible, where the glory of God was there for all to see and experience. There are protocols of mourning. There's conventions. There's laws governing how to mourn. And typically, when someone loses a relative, a parent, God forbid, they mourn for 11 months, maximum 12 months. And when we mourn great leaders, righteous men, righteous women, righteous people, we mourn a maximum of 12 months. And then we accept the condolences. And then we can move on. And it's a great kindness that God allows us to forget and move beyond the sadness that we have at the time of loss. In the words of the Talmud, it's a decree from God on high that the dead are forgotten. Not that they're forgotten. It means that the intensity of the pain goes away over time. It weakens over time. It's been more than 1,900 years, almost 2,000 years since the temple was destroyed. And the Rambam is describing a sort of mourning where the pain is still fresh and raw. The dead one is still in front of you, God forbid. Why? Because we're not mourning the past, we're mourning the present. Now, there is a tremendous benefit to mourn the temple, to mourn Jerusalem, to mourn the loss of God's glory in our midst. Those who mourn the temple, those who mourn Jerusalem, those who mourn what we lost, our saddest tell us, will merit to see in its rebirth. If you mourn Jerusalem in its destruction, you will merit to see Jerusalem in its joy. Now, what does that mean? The whole day is designed to mourn. You don't eat, you don't drink, you take off your shoes, you sit on the floor, you read the book of Lamentations in the chilling tone. You read the kinos, the elegies. But the truth is, the goal of the mourning is to invest the heart, to not just mourn on a surface level, but to actually feel the sadness and to feel the loss. And when someone does that, they earn the merit to be able to experience the happiness and the joy, please God, may it come really soon. And it's really, really hard to do. My grandfather, of blessed memory, used to say, just an analogy of what it's like. Suppose there is a person who is a prisoner, but he was born in a prison, and his parents were born in prisons, and his grandparents were born in prison, and no one ever left. And he grows up in prison. We would look at that person and say, that's such a lowly and pathetic life. What possible joy can they have in life? Such constriction. But the truth is, that person will find joy in their life. Maybe they go out for a stroll on the prison grounds. And yes, they're bound hand and foot in metal chains, but they could see some greenery and see some trees and hear the birds chirping. That's a pretty joyous experience. It's a beautiful world to see. Look, you can see beyond the barbed wires. You can see these trees and a blue sky. It's beautiful. Maybe they distribute some cigarettes once a week. That could bring a lot of joy to a prisoner. And you may describe to that person, oh, there's life. There's this whole vibrant life outside of the slammer. But they won't understand it. They can't visualize it in their mind. For them, life equals life behind bars. That's an apt description of what our life is like. Yes, we can all experience wonderful things. Life is beautiful. Life is joyous. But compared to what life really should be for us, compared to the joy and the happiness and the holiness and the delight of the world in its ideal form, we're like that prisoner. We know nothing beyond that constriction of living beyond the prison walls. We have no idea what it's like to live this elevated life with God in our midst. It's hard for us to mourn, but it's important for us to learn about what we lost and to learn about what we hope to regain. When we mourn on Tisha Bav, it's not about lamenting a burnt building. It's about thinking about the fact that we should not be living the way we are. And really, the ideal sense is to have that closeness between us and God restored, and to remove those iron barriers separating us from God, and to open up those portals to heaven. And it's a day to think about what we lost, what we hope to regain, and to plan what we can do to reverse that decree. We think about our world. It's a pretty good world. We have cars that could take us across vast swaths of land very fast, and plentiful food, and access to water and medicine and media and entertainment. Economy's doing pretty well. You can fly to Europe in a couple of hours. It's a pretty good life. Take a cruise, go on vacation. But the truth is, the ultimate goal is so much greater than that. It's so much loftier and more elevated than that. And even in our world, it hasn't been even 100 years since the worst genocide in history. It's within living memory. My wife's grandmother is still with us. And she was sent on the Kinder transports away from her family at 5 years old. And thankfully, she survived the war. She's in her 90s. And she needs a refuah shalema. She needs a healing. Freda Reza, Bas Chaya, Freda Reza, daughter of Chaya. That happened in living memory. That can only happen when there's such distance between us and God, where God, so to speak, says, you want to ignore me? Okay, ignore me, I'll ignore you. That's still possible in our world. And yes, of course, we hope and pray that such a thing will not happen again. But so long as we choose to ignore God, He will respond in kind. We repel Him, He will repel us. And when He repels us, when there's a thick metal barrier between us and Him, when there isn't a place in this world where His presence, where His glory is felt tangibly and palpably, such terrible tragedies are still possible. So we mourn, and we plan, and we think about what we can do to help reverse it. And there is a tiny silver lining in this day. There's one prayer that we say every day called Tachanun. It's the most mourning sort of prayer that we do every day. We fall on our heads, as it's known. And the one day, or one of the days that we don't do it, is on Tisha Bav. And the Talmud says, well, why don't you say Tachanun on Tisha Bav? It's the most mourning sort of prayer. It should certainly be said on the most mourning sort of day. And the Talmud says, well, it's a holiday. It's a festival. Now, we have festivals, and they don't look a lot like Tisha Bav. But the commentaries tell us, yes, there is a metal barrier separating us from God. And yes, there's tremendous distance. And yes, we have destruction and devastation born about by our choice to turn away from God. He turned away from us, and we suffered tremendously as a result. But He never severed the relationship. He never gave us a document of divorce. He never completely removed the connection. He weakened it tremendously, but it's still salvageable. And that is something to celebrate. The mourning of Tisha Bav is not a mourning of the past, it's a mourning of the present. And there are things that we can do to help bring about the restoration of the ideal life. The Talmud tells us that the sages determined what was the spiritual cause, the underlying spiritual cause of the destruction of the temple. And they said it was senseless hatred. Sinas chinam, senseless, needless, baseless hatred. And our sages have told us that if this is a primary, maybe the primary cause of the destruction, then the way it will be rebuilt is with senseless love. To love those even who are undeserving of love. To love those maybe even who you have gripes with. But Talmud already tells us, if you mourn, you'll merit to witness it. If you have a desire for connection, you'll get the connection. We turned away from God, so God turned away from us. If we turn towards God, He will turn towards us. Our desire, our thirst for it, will help effectuate it. Every Shabbos morning in the Kedusha prayer we say, we asked, we begged, Mimkomcha, from your place in heaven, your place away from us, so to speak. Come and reveal yourself to us here. Why? Because we are awaiting you. And we asked, when will you finally rule in Zion? May it happen close in our days. May it happen, once it happens, it'll be forever. When we drum up the desire for it, we're choosing to turn towards God. That in itself is grounds for God to say, okay, I'll make an appearance. I'll show up to Jerusalem. And once I show up to Jerusalem, it could cascade throughout the entire world. If the destruction happened in stages, well, then the rebuilding could happen in stages as well. We said that with the golden calf, there was the destruction of the ubiquity of God's presence. And with the sin of the spies, there was the destruction of the one point of the temple, of the tabernacle. Well, we hope to fix it also in stages. First, let God appear in Jerusalem and rule, so to speak. There'll be a place in Jerusalem where God's presence will be tangibly and palpably felt, and then it'll spread from Jerusalem everywhere, forevermore. And one of the ways that we drum up our desire for the temple, for Jerusalem, for the restoration of that relationship is by mourning. And again, it's hard to mourn because we know nothing of that life. We and our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents were all born in prison. They all live in chains. And our perspective has been molded by a life of exile. It's hard to feel sadness. You think about what you lost. You think about what the world lost. And maybe that can evoke some mourning and some yearning, some pining for better days. But even if you don't feel sadness, you can feel sadness at the fact that you don't feel sadness. That's the higher level where you say, I don't really feel sad. I'm such a prisoner. It's hard for me to think about it, but I'm sad that I cannot feel sad. I'm sad at the lack of sadness. That is something that we can all feel. Our sages tell us, if the temple is not built in this generation, it is as if it was destroyed in this generation. What that means is that the behavior needed to create the temple is the same behavior needed to perpetuate the temple. Meaning, if there was a temple and we behaved the way we've been behaving, then that temple will be destroyed. The same thing needed to perpetuate the temple is what's needed to bring it back, to restore it. And therefore, if we don't restore it, it must be that if it would be here, it would have been destroyed. Now that's a very harsh indictment on many great people. When we think about, we had the Chofetz Chaim and the Chazon Ish that lived 100 years ago. Such incredible sages. And to think that they would be in a world, that they would be in a generation that the temple is destroyed. You go back to Rashi and the Rambam and the great sages of the Mishnah and the Talmud. It's hard for us to find fault in those great sages. And the commentaries tell us that there's a cumulative effort to rebuild and to restore what we lost. And in every generation, the great sages and the great pious people and the holy people and the remarkable people that every generation we have, they're doing their part to build and to restore. And over the course of the exile, we don't see it, but Jerusalem is being rebuilt. The temple is being rebuilt. It's happening. And once it's ready, it will be revealed all at once. May we all be so fortunate to experience that incredible light that shines forth from Jerusalem. At least according to one opinion, when the temple will be rebuilt, it will not be rebuilt with human labor. It will be built in heaven, and every single brick is a righteous deed, is a mitzvah that someone did over here in this world. And once it's ready, it will descend with great fanfare in fire from heaven. That will be an incredible sight to see. A lot of people I met people that are dubious about this. Do you really believe, Rabbi, that there will be a temple on Temple Mount in Jerusalem? I said, well, it's called Temple Mount, okay? We had 2 temples, we'll have a 3rd one. I have no doubt about that. What I do have a doubt is that everyone will be righteous to see it. We say in our prayers, we pray, let our eyes be meritorious and worthy of seeing it. We want to be worthy to be able to witness it, to experience it. And the Talmud tells us, the key is if you feel what you lost, you will be worthy to witness its rebirth, its restoration, its renaissance. May it happen very soon. If it happens before this year on Tisha Bav will be turned into a festival, no longer be a fast, no longer be a day of mourning. And who wouldn't like that? May we all be so fortunate as to witness those tremendous happy days in our lifetime. And I have a very strong feeling that we're a lot closer than we may think. We're a lot closer. You know, the Talmud says you can't calculate when Messiah is going to come. You can't. It's prohibited. Yet, many of the sages did calculate. And one of the answers to explain why the sages calculated when Messiah is going to come, even though it's explicitly prohibited in the literature, it's because when the Talmud was written, it's 1,500 years ago. And it's very depressing to learn about the fact, in 1,500 years, the temple will be rebuilt. It's like when you take a drive. Imagine, let's say, from Houston to Canada or to New York, and you're still on the 59. And the kid's like, are we there yet? That's not fair to ask, are we there yet? If you drive for 3 days, well, then it's legitimate to ask. And my sense is that we're a lot closer than anyone realizes, than most people realize. Who knows? Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Hopefully very soon. When the great sage met Elijah and asked Elijah, when's Messiah coming? Elijah said, well, don't ask me, ask Messiah himself. Well, who's Messiah? I don't know Messiah. How do I find Messiah? He told me how to find Messiah. And he went to Messiah. And he asked Messiah, well, when are you coming? He says, well, today. So the sage hustled away to get ready, prepared. And the day came and went, Messiah didn't come. And when this sage met Elijah a second time, he said, well, the Messiah, they said he's a fraud. He lied to me. I asked him when he's coming. He said, Hayom, today. And Hayom, today came and he didn't show. So Elijah said to him, no, you left too early. You left prematurely. He didn't say Hayom. He said, Hayom, today, im bekolo tishmo, if in God's voice you hearken. Messiah can and will come today. Today's what? Sunday, July 27th, 2025. It could come today. If we turn to God, He will turn to us. My email just is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I look forward to your questions, your comments, and your feedback.